The boxing world was turned upside down when Canelo Alvarez managed to defeat Gennady Golovkin and retain his title as the middleweight champion. Everybody went wild as the historic fight ended with a bang, and today we're going to take you through how it all happened. So just sit back, relax, and put your feet up even, because this is about to be a blast. First up, what exactly happened? Alvarez was in the winning position from the start, and fans were left in shock, wondering what had happened to their Kazakh king. He easily dominated all 12 rounds, and nothing was standing in his way from clinching that win. Despite suffering a loss in his previous fight, Alvarez seems to be back on his feet and on his way to setting more records. If you watched the fight, then I guess you'd agree that Golovkin was fighting in a very unconventional way as compared to his usual style. For most of his fights, the fans have seen him follow through with a very aggressive fighting style, and he's even been seen eating punches just for the heck of it, like quite literally sticking his chin out and testing out his opponent's mettle. However, in this match, the 40-year-old was very unlike himself and eventually ended up losing the fight itself. This would go on to mark only his second loss in his illustrious 45-fight career. Golovkin admitted in a post-fight interview that he had started to slow, and that was the biggest reason he was handed an L. Next up, how did the win impact Alvarez? Alvarez had previously moved up to the light heavyweight division before this fight and suffered a loss at the hands of Dmitry Bivol and had been thrown for a loop. However, thankfully, there was a lot of emotion coming into this fight against Golovkin, and that seemed to hand him an edge over his competition, allowing him to go back to winning fights as if nothing had changed. Alvarez was seen promising the press that he would come back and best Bivol next year, as he felt it was necessary for his pride and the honor of his country and family. He made it known that avenging his loss in the light heavyweight division was next on his bucket list, and he'd stop at nothing to get it. Bivol himself is currently sitting at 20 fights undefeated, and so it'll be quite a challenge for Alvarez to be the one to end the streak. Alvarez talked about how he was suffering from a hand injury going into the fight with Gennady Golovkin, and how he'd need to take some time off, get surgery, and recuperate before stepping back into the ring for vengeance. He gave the press a rough time frame of about a year before he was ready to compete again. We're excited to see him in the ring again soon and see what he can do once he's back to tip-top shape. Coming up, what were Golovkin's thoughts on the outcome? Many fans had a firm belief that if Gennady lost this fight, it would be time to hang up his gloves and call it quits. But Gennady had other plans. When asked about his retirement in a post-fight interview, Gennady talked about how fire still burns within him, and he doesn't see himself walking away from the sport anytime soon. He reminded the press about the 3 belts he currently holds, so he can't say no to that. When asked about where the fight went wrong, he talked about how he regretted starting very slow in the fight, which isn't his style, and that was what lost him a lot of rounds. Usually, he doesn't take this long to pop off into his murderous rampage in the ring, so he was just as surprised as anybody at how the fight went down. Toward the end of the fight, Gennady had nothing but respect for the Mexican fighter and congratulated him on his win. Again, this was only the second loss he'd faced in his entire career, so we're guessing losing to arguably the best boxer in this era isn't that bad. Gennady talked about how he too will take some time off, get some rest, and get back in the ring soon. He told the press he'd been feeling fresh for a while and was in a great headspace and shape, so when he does eventually step back into the ring, he'd be ready to dominate again. Finally, what happens now? Both men are absolute legends in the sport, and there's nothing that can take that away from them. This face-off between 2 rings in the square battlefield was arguably one of the biggest and most anticipated fights of the century. Fans were ecstatic, and the arena was packed, and rightly so. Getting to watch them go at it was truly a sight to behold. Both men have decided to take some time off and relax, get their footing, and psych themselves up to dominate for another decade. We're excited to see what their next matchup is, particularly for Gennady. Alvarez has already called out his next opponent and is going to be looking for retribution as soon as he's back in top shape. With 7 belts between them, anyone who crosses paths with these absolute monsters is not in for a fun time in the ring. With Golovkin alone having 37 knockouts, you do not want to be hit by that jab. We're pretty hyped to see them step back into the ring soon, so next year can't come any sooner. When they're not making history, they're living their best lives. And so on that note, we wish these legends the best of luck on their path to recovery victory and hope to see more belts hanging from their waists soon. Now in other news. First up, Danny Jacobs calls out Gennady Golovkin. Danny Jacobs recently called out Gennady Golovkin and stated that he's looking for a rematch. He talked about how after watching the trilogy fight between GGG and Canelo, he was quite disappointed with how GGG performed and thought that a rematch between him and GGG was something that could get fans excited. He talked about the fight between GGG and Canelo and stated that he didn't feel like Gennady deserved more than 3 rounds. He said he was talking from a fighter's viewpoint, and from that angle, he felt it was a very poor performance put on by the 3-time champ. On the other hand, he was very impressed with how Canelo played out the fight, and he talked about how Canelo is usually a slow starter, and really when you look at it as a whole, both fighters fought in the exact opposite manner from how they usually fight. It's just Canelo who came out on top. He also criticized the judges and how they scored the fight. He felt that because they weren't fighters themselves, they couldn't possibly judge a fight like one, though we're not exactly sure how challenging a traditional system like this helps anybody. Next up, Jesse Rodriguez pulls off a win against Israel Gonzalez. Rodriguez continued his unbeaten streak by beating Israel Gonzalez, and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. The 22-year-old fighter seems hell-bent on making a statement in the boxing world, and so far, nothing has been able to stand in his way. Many boxing pundits have noticed how the fighter, though young, has the skill repertoire of someone who has fought for many years and is essentially a seasoned pro in the body of a newbie. On September 17th, Rodriguez showed how he's wise beyond his years when it comes to fighting and managed to secure an easy 12-round unanimous decision victory over his opponent in the T-Mobile Arena. Some fans may be disappointed with the fact that the fight didn't end with a knockout and wasn't as flashy. However, we on the other hand are very excited about his future in the world of boxing. We are sure the 22-year-old will continue to shine and eventually reach never-before-seen heights. His work ethic shows in his fights, how he controls his opponents and breaks them down both mentally and physically. If he keeps that up, there will be nothing standing in his path to a title win. Finally, Kieran Conway fulfills his lifelong dream of fighting in Vegas. Boxing star Kieran Conway talked about how it's always been a huge goal of his to fight in Las Vegas, attributing the dream to the fact that his parents and himself included were big fans of the OG hound dog himself, Elvis Presley. So to share a city with the king himself would be a lifelong achievement he's been waiting to accomplish for a while now. Conway's fight last year ended in a loss for him, despite knocking his opponent down in the 9th round. We're guessing the cards just weren't in his favor. He's looking to pull off a massive win in the land of Elvis, and we're all for it. If Conway manages the feat, he'll be making an entire community proud. We'll find out what happens soon enough. Until then, we wish the fighter the best of luck and hope he pulls through. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think GGG could have fought better? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.